Welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Doman. I've got a special guest, way of Kansas City. I'm assuming he's a Chiefs fan, Tom Shaw. Tom's going to talk today about like the picture of being an overcomer. So Tom, let's just jump right in. What is your story? What is the reason why is your story unique?
Okay. Well, Craig, first of all, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity. My story is unique because of this. Didn't overcome any of this trauma that I went through without the right mindset. It was very, very important that I had the right mindset throughout the entirety of my recovery period. And it was a good long time of recovery, between 3 and 5 years before I could walk again. But yeah.
Talked offline and you shared with me your story, but these guys don't know your story.
Right.
So I want you to jump in and I want you to start with
waking up,
finding out you can't walk.
Well, let me tell you how it really started. What really happened was I was at my girlfriend's house in Enid, Oklahoma, 16 years old. When I was a little kid, I had a problem with chronic sleepwalking. I walked out of my girlfriend's house, got in my car, and drove off. I drove about 2 miles or so, not knowing that I was asleep. When I woke up, I was in the bottom of a huge drainage ditch, paralyzed from the waist down, and it was 1:30 in the morning. It took about an hour and a half before a newspaper delivery truck went by and heard my honking. Got to the hospital and lose track of time in that time frame because, you're getting sedated and all this other stuff. Have this major surgery. When I woke up from all the surgery and the ICU and stuff, I was in this normal hospital room with my mom. She stayed there the entire time. And I was dazed and a little confused, and I didn't really know exactly what was going on, but I had questions. And I asked my mom, what the heck? What happened? And she said, well, you had an accident and you're paralyzed. And I said, oh, right away, there's my pity party starting right then. And my mom, and her wisdom, by the way, she was one of my heroes and mentors in life also. But what happened was she said to me, you know what? Don't worry about what happened right now. Let's just focus on what you need to do to get better and heal. And then she went on to say, this too shall pass. So shortly after that, I went to rehab. I was in rehab for 31 days. And I remember this meeting that they had me come to. And I wheeled my wheelchair into this meeting on the third day I was there. And it's like a half circle of all these chairs, probably 20 chairs in front of me. And then my wheelchair and then 2 chairs on either side for my parents. And I didn't know what was going on. And this main doctor fella, he sits down and he says, hey, Tom, how you doing? I said, well, I've had better days, I'm paralyzed and still having that pity party. And he said to me, Tom, tell me what you expect to get out of rehab. And I said, you know what? I'm going to walk out of here one way or another. He said, you know what, Tom? Based off your prognosis, that is not really a good goal. So why don't you think about it? We can come back to that. And I said, you know what? This meeting's over. Turned my wheelchair around and I left the meeting. Never. 31 days later, I had braces on both legs up to my waist and crutches, and I walked out of there. That was the beginning of making this happen for myself. Where I got the mindset for everything that I accomplished was from my athletic training when I was fourth grade. I had a coach named Johnny Quarles. And Johnny Quarles, he was an interesting man. He was not only a oil man, but he was an author. You could Google him to this day, and he he's no longer alive, but he has books out there, Western novels. And Johnny Quarles loved Alabama football, but he loved Bear Bryant even more. And I'm telling you, Craig, he coached us fourth graders like we were Alabama. And I was all of probably 80 pounds dripping wet. And he put me at center, and I would screw something up, and he'd say, Shaw, get over here. And I remembered that it's such I can smell him, and I can, feel the presence of him, because he chewed this spearmint gum and he smoked. And he always wore this leather vest and boots, and the back of it was like kind of a typical 70s vest. And he called me over and he grabbed my face mask, which they can't really do that today, but it was a different time period. And he said, Shaw, and he got right up in there so I could smell every bit of nicotine and gum. He said, Shaw, you get your butt on the ball and get this right, or you're going to find a boot up your backside. Yes, sir. Now that's motivation, right?
Great. So
fourth grade.
I got a couple of thoughts here that I want to interject. One, that majority of people get told by a medical professional their prognosis is X. Believe it.
Absolutely. They do.
And it's like, because it's the doctor, and if the patient is like questioning whether or not, like in your case, being a 16-year-old young man, the parents will validate and confirm what the doctor told you so that you don't get disappointed down the road because they don't want you to have unrealistic expectations.
Right. Right.
You didn't buy it.
Not at all.
I think there's a super duper lesson right there for everybody listening. Every one of us has been told something not that drastic, like we're never going to walk again. We've been told by somebody we weren't going to be something. Been told by our boss, our spouse, kids, our parents, friends, people that we trust and love. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Choose. Do you believe it or not? And then you got to follow it up with the work. But the first step is belief.
That's right. That's right. My parents and my little league coaches, they were on the same page. I went home that night and told on the coach to my mom, and my mom said, "That's okay, honey. I told Coach Quarles, if you step out of line, he can correct you." And I was like, what the heck? So I had it not just on the field, but off the field. And those were the lessons that I had to take into my recovery. All the way up through high school, when I had my accident, I was a defensive back. I was a running back. I was, probably a lot like your son, where, muscly, athletic, and can run like a deer. Well, that was me. And before my accident, I was getting recruited as an underclassman and from schools in the Big Eight. And that's where my mind was. I was going to college to play ball and onto the NFL.
There's one more thing here, Tom. I know you're a little off. I can already tell. It was from the beginning when you said you were a Husker fan from Oklahoma.
I get that. I get that a lot. I get that
over sooner, man. What's going on with that?
Well, you know what? I had a really strong-minded, strong-willed uncle who was my mom and her brothers and sisters were from Nebraska, and he's been a Husker fan his entire life. And he challenged me that I would never become a Husker fan. And then he started taking me and paying for tickets. And, you've been there. You've seen the atmosphere. It's hard not to like that atmosphere.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Get back on track. I think there's a theme here.
Yeah.
Because a couple things happen. I don't even know you, and I don't know all your story, but the couple things you've said, you didn't go down the road everybody else was going down.
Well, Craig, I couldn't. And because of my athletic training, I knew the things I had to believe. because I knew that I could do this. And it started with my big toe on my left foot just barely moving. And when I saw that that wasn't an accident and that I made it move with my mind, and I would sit or lay in bed for hours just visualizing my big toe moving until I could move it more and more each time. But as I worked through that, it wasn't just that I was paralyzed. I didn't have use of bowel and bladder. They told me I would never have kids. I've got 3 grown-up kids that are doing wonderful. I got a diesel mechanic son, a lieutenant in the United States Navy who's a pilot, and a sergeant who's in the Air Force who's a munitions expert. They're awesome. And so, again, I didn't believe what they said to me. And I know that with all the training I've had through Les Brown, you know, one of the things he says is you've got greatness within you. Everybody has it. But Craig, you said something earlier about tapping into it. Not everybody either A, is able to tap into it, but B, not willing to tap into it because they're fearful that they'll succeed or they're fearful that they'll fail. Either way, they just go back to mediocrity and they go back to what's easy because it's hard. No motivational speaker or coach never has said it's not going to be easy, or it's not going to be hard, rather. It's going to be hard. And Murphy's waiting for most of us out in the parking lot, and he's going to smack us around a little bit. Because whatever it is you're doing, if you're working a corporate job or a realtor, it doesn't matter. Life is going to happen. Things are going to happen. And you've got to keep the right mindset. You can't allow things in this world to dictate what your day turns out like. You know, have you ever been around people at meetings and they come in the room and they just suck all the energy out of the room because they're so negative? But then on the flip side, you've probably been in meetings and maybe it was you came in the room and you brightened the whole room up because you had the right mindset, the right attitude. See, I believe that you could go into a really crummy situation in life and turn it into a great situation with a great attitude. Or you can go into a great situation in life and have a terrible attitude, and guess what? You're going to get exactly what you wanted to get out of it from what you believe. And if you don't believe that, then pay attention. Pay attention to the things you're doing in life. Pay attention to how you think about, all I get is bills. Well, quit thinking about the bills. You take care of the bills and then think about getting checks in the mail. There's a lot of ways to offset that thinking. And for me, having that ability to visualize and all the training I had and that stick-to-itiveness that coaches drill into you, you know, I mean, my persistence is, I would say, as strong and unwavering as anybody's. I was previously married to my kids' mom, and then when I remarried my wife, I called her and talked to her on the phone for over 9 months before we even had a date. Well, you know what? I had to wear her down. And she said, "You were just too persistent."
Point play.
Yeah. And so, you know, my message is about helping people overcome things. My message is about giving people hope and understanding that it's very important to be grateful and show your gratitude. Every day before me or my wife leaves the house, I say to one of us says it, "I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being my partner in life. I'm just grateful for you." And the reason we do it is because it's a great start to having a positive day. You know, Zig Ziglar will say, what you listen to in the first 20 minutes of your day can determine what your day turns out like. And, you know, I also subscribe to Zig Ziglar Corporation. I'm a certified speaker, trainer, and coach through Zig Ziglar Corporation and able to coach 5 of Zig Ziglar's books. 2 of the books are his son's books, Tom Ziglar. But that's the coaching program that I use, and it's very easy, but it's very thought out, and it connects to people. Everything's been researched on the top end and then through a biblical standpoint on the back end, because he was a very biblical guy.
Let me interrupt. Go back to that time period. You don't know what you don't know. Just willed yourself to walk. Visualize yourself with your legs moving. What the doctors told you couldn't do. And kids, you walked again. Get your strength in moments due to place the comeback.
Yeah, my strength comes from a variety of other people. I used my parents and friends and family as my stretcher bearers. I didn't realize that's what they were going to be labeled as until I became a little more mature and adult like I am now. But these people, my buddies from football, they didn't treat me like I was sitting in a wheelchair. You know, they just treated me like they always had. They didn't give me the pity party that I think a lot of people would get. They didn't open doors for me. They didn't get me cups off the top shelf. They're like, figure it out. You'll figure it out. If you got to go to the bathroom bad enough, you'll figure it out. And so through that, I had a lot of great friends and a lot of great mentors with my parents and some uncles. And the strength came from within me because I had learned about faith, and I had a lot of faith, but I had faith in me. And the faith in me was to say, we're not going to take this laying down, no pun intended. I wasn't going to accept it. You know, I was going to do what was best for me. And what I had to do was keep working. So after I got out of rehab, I go back to Enid, Oklahoma. I didn't have a car. So it was about 5 miles to the rehab center where I had to go for rehab. So I would push my wheelchair to rehab and back like 3 times a week. And so I was routinely doing that because I knew that with their help and the exercises and them being able to focus in on things, that I could utilize what they were teaching me also. And I ended up having 4 major back surgeries, and the last 2 were at the University of Kansas Medical Center. I'm a Dr. Asher and a Dr. Jacobs. And they put these rods in my back, and these rods are, well, they've been in there for nearly 40 years now, okay? But when you're laid up and you're finishing high school, this is 3 years or so after my accident. And one of my goals was to walk across the stage at my graduation, high school graduation, and get my diploma. Well, I was at home and they were doing homebound schooling. The teachers would come over during the day and I would do my lessons, and I graduated on time. But at night, while everybody's asleep, I was in this little bedroom and I would get up and I would practice walking across the bedroom. It was about 6 or 8 steps. And then I'd walk back and I would just practice and practice and practice till I got to where I had some relatively good balance with my left leg. My left leg is probably, they would call it 100%. I still have some areas on it where it's numb and I can't feel it. But my right leg is paralyzed completely from the knee down and partially from the hip to the knee. And so I've got an interesting walk. I don't use any canes or crutches, but I have an AFO device in my shoe that holds my foot up when I walk. And I do just fine. But what happened was this. We had this routine when my parents and we would come home from school on a long day's work, whatever. We'd pull in the driveway. Dad would hop out, go to the front to get the mail, and my mom would get out and get the wheelchair out of the trunk. Well, this one particular day, I got out of the car with her because I didn't want to throw this on my parents walking at the graduation, then kind of, because my mom would have passed out and it would have been a whole scene. I told them ahead of time, basically. I got out and I walked around to behind the car with her, and she realized it once we got to the back of the car, and she freaked out like I thought she would. Started screaming and yelling, "Dad, come around, what's wrong?" And she was just, he's walking, you know. And so then I was able to put my crutches down and walk across the stage, get my diploma, got a standing ovation. It was one of the most coolest things I've ever gone through in terms of really an accolade, if you will. But it was more about the hard work that I put into it and the determination I put into it and the action I took to make sure that I was going to do it. It wasn't a question of, yeah.
I ask you to do something for me here.
Yeah.
I want you to go back to graduation in your mind. I want you to close your eyes for a second. I want you to go back to Enid, Oklahoma school graduation. You're walking across the stage after a doctor told you never would walk again. Got all that validation and ovation from your... What was the emotion that you felt?
Was overwhelmed with gratitude and appreciation. I was exhausted. I felt like a champion. I felt as if I could do anything I wanted to do. I felt strong, and I felt like nothing's stopping me now, baby. I got this. And so far in life, that's the way I've had the attitude. I don't know if you've read this part of my story, but I also detoxed off of a 33-year opioid addiction in 2018. And that was from my accident. They put me on opioids back in 1985. But I never had to do criminal activity to get opioids. I just had to make a phone call to my doctor's office and they'd fill it. And my wife's in the medical field, and she got kind of tired of me whining about how the opioids made me feel. And she said, "Well, why don't you just quit taking them?" I said, "Man, I don't know. I'm a little fearful of that." She said, "Well, we'll figure it out after you get off of them." And I said, "Okay." Well, so I went to a doctor at KU, and we started weaning off of the medications. I was on methadone. And we got down to a really teeny tiny amount of methadone, I thought it was. I couldn't even cut the pill anymore because it was that small of a dose. And at that point, they just don't make it that small, but I was supposed to dose off. Well, I got frustrated, so I just quit taking them. And about 3 days later, my wife said, "What's going on? You kind of acting like something's going on here. Did you quit taking your meds?" And I said, "Yeah." And of course, I got in trouble, you know. And she called the doctor, got me some replacements medicine that would help me get through the rest of the detox. About 14 days later, I was completely off and completely exhausted, but I felt like an absolute new person. I could take a deep breath. One of the things that the opioids were doing was backing up my intestines. And I always thought, well, my back pain was from my accident. I got my lower back is just solid bone. I got rods and screws, and that's my assumption. I got off the opioids. I don't take anything, an occasional ibuprofen, Tylenol, but I don't take anything. All that back pain was being generated from my intestinal tract being backed up. And boy, I'll tell you what, that's one thing. I've known a lot of people who've gone through a treatment for drugs and alcohol, and they've had to do it multiple times. I have a different respect for people that are working their butt off to get off of alcohol and drugs because, man, that's a hard deal. And you got to have a good mindset to get through that.
Let's go back and compare. Learning how to walk again, it was a mental challenge, but it was really a physical challenge.
Mm-hmm.
but it was psychological. It was all these things. Spiritual, it was physical first.
Yeah.
When you're addicted to a substance, more psychological first. It's also physical. You can't isolate these things into one category. They penetrate everywhere.
Right.
What did you learn from your overcoming how to walk? Helped you when you finally decided I'm going to get off this stuff? Helped you with your opioids? That you could master that as well.
Well, what I learned from learning how to walk again was I can do this. I've done hard things before, and I've been in positions that were hard before. Learning how to walk when you're paralyzed, part of it was medicine. My body healed, and maybe my spinal cord injury wasn't as severe as they anticipated. That was, hey, I'll take it. If you get lucky, sometimes you got to take it and be gracious about it. But the other thing is, I prayed about it. I talked to people about it. Man, I crossed the bridge every chance I could. I didn't wait for something to come to me. I went after it. And that was the difference between getting off opioids and not. Look, I was fearful. I told my wife, I'm nervous. I'm a little fearful about getting off. What if? And she was my support. And I believe that that's a huge point to point out. All of us need support. Every one of us need the type of support. Friends, like you were telling me about when we were off camera, friends and family that, man, you can lean on them, you know, and they know that they're that friend for you or your spouse. And I leaned on her for that 14 days, and she had faith in me. And I took what I had and her faith in me, and I pushed through it. And it was like having the flu or COVID on 10 times on steroids. It was so terrible. I mean, it was terrible. But what I learned from the two different situations was I can do this. I can get through any issue in life that life throws at me. And that's why I want to go out and speak to people, because I know that I can make a difference in people's lives just by letting them hear my story and what I did and how I did it and the words that I am going to speak. Hey, if there's 100 people in the crowd and I hit one or two and they go, man, can you help me? Can you coach me? Can you talk to me? I've done my job. You know, the people that are out there waiting for Craig to speak, they're out there. Your words are going to be important to somebody you don't know someday, just like mine are. And that's exactly why Les Brown is having mentors and building this legacy group, because he wants our words to kind of perpetuate his words. And we're going to do it. And we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And we're not always going to be perfect. I mean, I've failed my way through things a few times. And I understand what it means to not win. And that goes back to when I was in Little League again, because those coaches prepared us for, hey, you've got to be a good winner, but you got to be a better loser. Because when you do lose, it's going to hurt, because you're not going to lose as often as the other teams we're playing. And so, pardon me?
Like, if I can interject, I'm going to just kind of summarize a couple of things that I heard you say. You gained you had hope and you had faith when you were paralyzed. You were a young man. You were 16. You didn't know what you didn't know. Or, you were hoping. And when you walked across that stage in front of all your entire school, your classmates, parents, gained a spirit of hope that most people never find. Okay. it's an inside game, not an outside game, because you listen to the outside noise, the outside prognosis, then you probably wouldn't even have tried. You have been doing that you were doing in your room to prepare yourself to have the strength to do it on stage. So, and the last thing I would say is that have a yearning to change, as you were probably liked your life before the accident. The accident, you probably didn't like your life as much, didn't like your circumstances as much. Nobody would. Wanted to change. You're on painkillers because that's what doctors give you. You don't even realize it, but you're addicted to them. Wanted to change again. So you had to go through a different metamorphosis of change to detox from something you've been used to for 33 years. You had the fear of failure, the fear of pain, the doubt of what if, all those kind of things were popping in your head, but you did it. So I think I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just observing. It's like everybody needs to have a spirit of hope, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of their prognosis, regardless of somebody who told them they couldn't be what they want to be. And inside, it's an inside game.
I agree 100%. And it does. In my educational life, my psychology degree and all that, I know the inside tips and tricks about talking to people and so on. But what I learned a lot about from life was what I really tapped into. And the training was always great and it served its purpose, but we can't give away what we don't have inside of us already. I can't give hope to a group of 1,000 people if I don't have hope and show that I believe that I have hope. I can't give away gratitude. I can't give away love if I don't have it in there for myself. And so I think that in our culture and our society right now, we are needed, you and I are needed more now to go out and be a voice of hope and to uplift people now more than ever since you and I have been alive. And the reason I feel that way is because there are so many people. I go to these speaking seminars and there's 2,000-3,000 people. And it doesn't take a lot to get them riled up and get them excited. But they find hope in the words that we speak to them because they know we believe it. And they're going to borrow our confidence for as long as they have to until they can grow their own confidence and do things on their own. And that's what I want to be able to do with my story. And I've got tons of other things we could go into. But the fact is that you've got greatness within you. And I know that not because I know you, but I know people. And I know that I have it. Les Brown says, win and die empty. Don't leave things in your life undone that you want to accomplish or feel you need to accomplish. If you think you need to write a book, then start writing that book. If you need to write a song, then start writing that song. If you want to learn how to play guitar, go buy a guitar and take lessons. I'm 55 years old. Guess what I did 3 months ago? I went and bought a guitar and started taking lessons. I've been wanting to play a guitar all my life, but I'm doing it. I'm not going to preach and talk about things that I don't stand behind, because when I give somebody hope, it's going to be real. It's going to be real and it's going to be palatable. They're going to know that they've been listening to or got the energy from somebody who is genuinely caring, loving, kind, and wants to help them. And so that's the message that I want to get out there for people. My wife and I wrote my book. I wrote most of it. My wife wrote the last chapter of the book. But she was able to write that chapter as a caregiver and as a spouse. Now, keep this in mind. If you get my book, and I should get you a copy, mail it to you. But I met my wife in 1986. We didn't get married until 2009. Okay? I was married to somebody else. My wife was one of my nurses on my last two big surgeries, and she cared for me when I was at the hospital at the University of Kansas. And we stayed in contact all those years, off and on. Not a lot, but enough. Her biggest mistake was she never changed her phone number, and that's how I was so persistent, by the way. But the point is that when you have opportunity in front of you and you have a desire to do it, then do it. Don't wait. Why would you wait? You know, you've talked to me briefly about your boys. You know, they've got great things going on in their lives. From the outside, people who look into the world of athletics, they go, wow, that's great. They make lots of money and they do this and they do that, da, 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 da. But they don't know those people, the fans, the general public. They don't know what that athlete goes through on a day-to-day basis. They don't know the mindset of what it takes to be a champion every single day. Even if your team is losing, you have to have a champion mindset. And that's what I learned all my years in athletics. I learned that mindset of a champion is a lot more than just those two words. It's way more. And we could probably talk for hours about this because I'm a geek about this stuff, Craig. I really am. But I have a passion to go out and speak to people and help people. I do my other job and I do fine with that. But I'm passionate about this.
Let me interject again. One of the things that you said is very true. You really want to finish your life. No regrets. You want to, if there's something you've been thinking about doing, why not today? Why not now? I think when you look at like big projects, I want to learn how to play guitar. That's not going to be easy unless you're musically inclined. Do it one day at a time. Can you finish today? An empty tank. Give it everything you got today, whether it's in your relationships, it's in your physical health, it's in your career, or your hobbies, or whatever else, what other categories in your faith walk, in your self-care, body care, taking care of yourself. Can you empty the tank today? And then guess what? Wake up tomorrow and be thankful you got another day and then do it again.
Yeah. Les Brown always says, and if you don't believe me, try skipping one of those days and see how that works out for you. You know, it's not a good alternative. So especially when you have, like you said, things that you want and need to do, those gifts are yours. They're nobody else's gifts. You can't start writing a book and then your wife can finish it. It won't be the same book. That book comes from you. That book was given to you by whatever universe you believe in. It came to you. It's your gift. And if you write that book, that's your gift. One of them. And we all have many gifts, but many people just don't make the realization about, what it takes, the action it takes. And they get to the action part, and that's when they usually fail or fall down because they see that it's hard, or that it has a monetary expense, or that it has a time expense, or that it has something else that they're just like, nah, I'll just go back to watching the evening news and petting the dog, which is all fine. We need people like that in this world too. But if you come to listen to me and Craig talk, you're going to leave motivated and ready to get some work done.
More things. One is the athlete's journey. Guys that are the 1%ers of the 1%ers that make it to the NFL, the odds are so small. They're just ridiculous. The guys that play youth sports and high school football and don't get an opportunity to play in college, and a lot of really good players in college don't make it in the NFL. Thing that does not show up on Sundays when you're watching TV or you go out to the stadium, all the adversity these guys have had to overcome. Whether it's injuries, whether it's people doubting them, whether it's them doubting themselves, it's fear of failure, it's their body being an inch too short, of a second too slow, those types of things. And so this misconception that the NFL represents the best athletes. No question. There's some best athletes there. There's a lot of guys there who are awesome athletes, but they're not the best. They have the best mindsets. They've got this. I'm no other option. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna make it happen. They've got standards that are higher than everybody else. Give it everything they got every time they get an opportunity. Those kind of things. And the other thing I want to mention that you touched on was the concept that everybody is living on not Gilligan's Island. You're living on Tom's Island. Living on Craig's Island. Anybody that's got blood pumping through their veins is a dream island. Looks a little bit different. It's a little bit more prosperous. Mm-hmm. It's doing a different job, having a different purpose, all those kind of things. Unless you can bridge, boat, that dream island, you're never going to get there. Most people don't, and then you mentioned this, most people don't even take the first step. They think it's far away, too much, costs too much, or it's too late. When guys hit 40, oh my God, you're over the hill.
Yeah,
that window's closed.
Yeah,
it's too late. Well, it's never too late.
No, and that first step is the most important one to take, because that's how you start. You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. And many, many people just refuse to start. They don't want to start. And when they're presented with, let's just say, somebody who maybe works at GM factory or something, man, they got their pension, they got their 9 to 5, they work their hours, they go home, they do their weekend stuff, and then Sunday they go back and they do it all over again. And so they're happy, they're comfortable. I don't want to be comfortable. I want to continue pushing and pushing and pushing that comfort, so that I'm always just a little bit uncomfortable with where I'm at, because I need to do more. I need to do more, and I can do more. It's interesting. You mentioned off camera, your boys kind of got your genes. My daughter, who's in the Navy, she's got my genes. She's going to be able to retire at 41 with a full pension from the Navy. I mean, she's an overachiever. Her mindset is, we got to do this. Let's get it done. And the fact that she's gone through training in the military where they break you down completely and treat you like a prisoner of war, and she got through that. Man, that spoke volumes in my mind of how, number one, I pat myself on the back, not to be gregarious or braggadocious, but man, I raised her and I helped her become who she is. But when she got to that military training at SEER school, that's all her, baby. She did that part. And that is some tough training that most people in the military say that's the best training I never want to go through again, because it is just like being in prisoner of war. But it's interesting how you meet people and you can sense it in their voice that they're exhausted from everyday life, and they don't even know what they want. Well, I don't know what I want. It's like, well, you're 47 years old. Why don't you figure it out and make it happen? And it's fine if it is, I want to go on a good vacation, or I want to, whatever that is, make it happen. Take your family on a vacation.
The world beats everybody up. And when the world beats you up, you stop dreaming. I would encourage our audience to do is, if you have a dream, rekindle that dream. Pursue your dream. Life's too short. Absolutely. Find your book
on Amazon right now, and I'm in the process of getting it recorded so I can put on there an audiobook also. And then my website is emergentspeaking.com. And that's up and running, and it's going good. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. And I am also going to be, speaking with Les Brown in LA in October, and then again in Atlanta. And learning from somebody like him is just a gift, because this cat is 80 years old, and I'm telling you, he always says this, he's a 35-year-old man stuck in an 80-year-old man's body. And
I feel like I'm 29.
He's tenacious. I'm telling you, he is tenacious. And look up some of his, Google him and YouTube him. The one is, It's Possible. Or another one is, he spoke to 80,000 people in the Georgia Dome. And that's really the speech that got him, springboarded him. Not to mention, he was getting to be friends with Dr. Vincent Peale, Zig Ziglar, and all the guys that most people have heard about. But he's fantastic to listen to, and he's even better as a mentor.
I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today.
Thank you,
all you
Brad.
listeners out there. Check out his book titled The Ride to Victory: Surviving Trauma and Addiction. Tom Shaw. Also want you to check out Pro Mindset. Book came out last month. Get it on craigdillman.com/book. It's a new book at Amazon. We're trying to get the paper copy on Amazon. But I want to thank everybody for listening today, and I just want to challenge everybody today to do what you've been thinking about doing, or what you've been thinking about starting, been procrastinating about, and just take that first step today. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Craig. Really appreciate it.
Hey, it's Craig Dillman, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a Pro Mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.